Empowering Auditors, AI co-piloting ABC, audit firms, banks and companies by SOS Governance Standards, Subject, Object, Self-Governance Standards. Corporate MOM, Corporate Management Orbiter Mission. ICGI is second in the series of number 4, ESG Audit, FEC Report and arriving at Society Assurance. The summary of my presentation. I advocate for a SOS Governance Standards approach to integrate ESG, environmental, social, governance factors and provide a common rating system that is easily understandable. Number 2, SOS Governance Standards propose moving from object governance to subject-object self-governance (SOS), where companies establish their own standards and auditors provide third-party assurance. Number 3, I emphasize the need for a dynamic database to track CO2 emissions and climate-related commitments with a focus on area-wise analysis rather than just per capita or country-wide metrics. SOS governance standards suggest dividing large workforce into small teams, with one member focused on ethical responsibility to improve accountability and track performance. 5. I argue that companies need to move from accounting to accountability, setting specific targets like 15% CAGR to contribute to national goals such as Viksit Bharat 2047. ICGI Series number 4, 2, ESG Audit, FEC Report for Society Assurance. In ICGI Series 401, I focused on empowering auditors with emphasis on FEC Report of Auditors, self-governance. In fact, it is auditing of the auditors. In this series, 402 ESG Audit, I am focusing on empowering auditors with emphasis on FEC Report of Investee companies, ESG Audit. It is indeed society assurance. Equipping boards with right data. Let me quote from diligent.com. Effective oversight of ESG will depend on whether today's boards have the right information at their fingertips. In a research report by Forrester and Diligent, governance professionals indicated that visibility into sustainability and ESG issues was their greatest dissatisfaction. Let me note here on ESG rating agencies and firms. At present, more than 600 agencies issue ESG scores. Some of the most common are Bloomberg ESG Data Services, Corporate Knights Global 100, Sustainalytics ESG Risk Ratings, Dow Jones Sustainable Index Family, Thomson Reuters ESG Scores, RepRisk, which uses artificial intelligence. So we have a plethora of ESG scores coming from more than 600 agencies. We will take a look on that. Let me introduce you to SOS Subject-Object Self-Governance Standards. You find governance professionals indicated that visibility into sustainability and ESG issues was the greatest dissatisfaction, isn't it? It is because you are all doing the object governance only, like a flat profitability and balance sheet statements. There are 17 SDGs, 9 social, 4 environmental and 4 economic development sustainability development goals. Louis Coyante, in a UN report in 2012, made the observation that economic and social goals are not integrated, each publishing that independent of each other. Moreover, most conclusions of happiness surveys are usually based on information from weird, Western, educated, industrialized, rich democracies, countries, limiting the credibility, states Louis Coyantes. Take steps to integrate all the 17 SDGs by a single rating system, that is SOS Governance Ratings. 600 agencies issue ESG scores. Who benefits? Bring in a common denominator for ratings that a common man can understand easily. Two things I suggest: accounting to accountability of ESG issues. Number one, investee companies' responsibility. FEC report by SOS Governance Standards. Several billions of US dollars go into climate bonds. Prepare the FEC report, CREAM report, framework. Number two, common ratings standards. Risk management areas of carbon emissions. Take a look at M&M risk management areas of carbon emissions. Check the rating standards applied. Common to every area of a company's operations. There are 308 open-ended process blocks for preparing a CREAM report. Only 12 are quantitative, P&L and balance sheet, and 296 are qualitative elements of management, including ESG process blocks. Proceed to action enabling ESG audits at its best, meaning companies have to establish the standards so that ESG auditors can tick the space on ratings arrived at. Companies establishes the SOP by self-governance, and auditors do the third-party assurance leading to society assurance. So if you look at the SOS governance, all SOS is that of the company's responsibility, because you want to create an object governance for which the people who are within are the subject, and the company has to take on the self-governance platform. ESG audit is normally is environmental due diligence, but it doesn't work in isolation. I'll explain. For example, the climate bonds. The climate bonds taxonomy is a guide to climate aligned assets and projects. It's a tool for issuers, investors, governments, and municipalities to help them understand what the key investments are that will deliver a low carbon economy. So it's going to be a collection of people, not simply investor-investee relationship. Investee company has to take several areas of perfection, absolute perfection, because the taxonomy is very tough. Brownfield to greenfield. As a very tough taxonomy being given by the climate bonds issuers. Now, let me recall the governance professionals indicating that visibility into sustainability and ESG issues was their greatest dissatisfaction. It's very important because when you go in for a environmental due diligence, we look into the several areas, like some of them like water security, carbon emissions, product stewardship, health and safety, sustainability of supply chain. These are the things which I've already indicated. A page next to the FEC report framework, I'm giving that of M&M, and the later you can, I'm giving only one sample on carbon emissions, which could be applied to each and every area of a company's operations. So that you can download from last but one page I have given, the PDF files, 6 PDF files, which is very important for SOS governance standards being applied. And then the auditor, once it is being applied, ESG auditor will be in a position to, as I say, tick mark, find out whether it's 0 to 5, whether it is 4 or 5 or 3 or 2 or 1 or 0 of 308 areas of process blocks. that are being analyzed. So you have ESG risk, we have financial risk, we have safety risk, we have labor risk. In addition, if you look at the UNGC Compact, United Nations Global Compact, you have human rights, labor rights, environmental rights, and anti-corruption. Louis Quyante's attempt to integrate social and economic sustainability goals are relevant even now if we are to be satisfied with the risk assessment of a company's risk management. This is the main reason why the plethora of rating systems do not deliver the satisfaction of ESG risk. Governance of all the risks have to be measured independently. Application of SOS governance standards are important for societal good and societal assurance. This is what the ESG audit purpose. It is not the purpose of taking only the financial risk or the ESG risk. There is no such thing. It is the SOS governance standards are being applied and being displayed in their annual reports or a daily report is for the society. FEC report is fiscal and ethical co-responsibility framework. Here, subject-object self-governance is being analyzed. In this particular case, we are talking about the investee merit, measure, record, implement, and track. When you do the investee company, we have several things which we have discussed already, like climate bond, could be about $500 million. It could be application of various areas, 5 areas which we talked about: water security, carbon emissions, product stewardship, health and safety, sustainable supply chain. This is a common one for every company, this particular framework. When you look at the management quality, that is the repository of various laws and policies, regulatory framework, compliance system, and the individual area of influence. Like when you talk of the ESG audit, anything connected with a particular ESG audit is there in the management quality for the purpose of analyzing and arriving at the SOS governance system. When you say SOS governance, subject object self governance is the entirety brings it as a whole. But if you look at the management quality, assuming there are about 100,000 people in a company, about 2,000 teams are formed. If you look at the subject framework, in the 2,000 teams, maybe about say about 10 teams connected with ESG, maybe about 50 teams connected with sales and marketing, another 50 for consumption, another 1 or 2 for investments and other things, or long-term long-term borrowing and other things that they are looking at. So individually, if you look at it, it is subject governance for that particular subject that we are dealing with. So if you look at that ESG audit, the ESG area, ESG issues are connected only to say about 10 teams. That's about 50 people who are doing it for the company on a particular area, which I shall explain in the next page as to the carbon emissions. So that becomes a subject analysis, subject governance. How these 50 people are dealing with a particular subject matter. That is a subjective. For the rest of the company, since they are very much involved, as much as everybody is involved for the profitability of the company, the growth of the company, this environmental and social governance is also there involved. They are involved. For them, it is an object governance. They look at that ESG as an object and how it is functioning. It is their great interest. That interest is revealed by merit, measure, record, implement, and track of ESG areas for which they are interested with. Now, as a whole for the company, there's the same. Whether you are doing for a marketing area or for investment area or for consumption, you are trying to do that. In each area, every subject matter within the company, there are 100,000 people. So you have about 2,000 teams or that. They are working in together, competing with each other, performing well in their own area of influence. But if you look at it, we are bringing out how they function, how they are governed. And that is the most important. It is not just an object governance. It is a subject governance as a whole. If you, add up one with the other. So you have about 100,000 people is being deployed for the purpose of the management of the corporate operating system. They are in total. So if you look at that as an outside, like for example, 600 teams, 600 over agencies issue ESG scores. The ESG scores, for example, RepRisk, which uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to compile coverage of ESG risk assessment for more than 160,000 public and private companies. It looks huge. It is not huge if you add up 100,000 people for each company. It is 100K into 160,000 company that we are looking at. So which AI is capable of doing it. They are doing only 160,000. Multiply that by 100K. You have 100K into 160,000 people are involved. That's a huge. That is the one which is suspected out of any of these ESG scores, which more than 600 agencies are doing, which is common. This SOS governance is a common factor, denominator for every company. You can have any number of companies, then arrive at how many people are being, the more the number, the more opportunity to know how they function. So which is a small society? Within a company of 100,000, the whole 100,000 is part of the ESG. If you expand it to a municipality, if you expand it to a district, if you expand to your government, if you expand to the global level, you have a huge opportunity of how the societal good is being taken care by this particular company. We are not talking about 160,000 companies. We are talking about one company. And they are comparable. One company with 160,000 companies are comparable with the SOS governance system, which is again multiplied by 100K of people. So this is the framework going to be better, good, understandable by the society as society assurance, how they are doing in terms of sustainability of efficiency, sustainability of profits, sustainability of growth, which is sustainability of value system. That is the important aspect of ESG audit. And the auditors, their responsibility in this case also, ESG audit also, is depends upon the object governance. They are not in subject governance. The subject object self-governance is to be implanted, is to be installed by the responsibility of the board of directors. They are the ones who have to do that. And ESG audit becomes simple. Let's take up the next one, carbon emissions. The four criteria which I have indicated here. Carbon pricing index, EP 100, there is double energy productivity by 2030. Carbon emissions, reduce carbon intensity by 47% by financial year 2033-34, and carbon neutral by 2040. So very interesting because of the target dates are totally different. I have published two episodes, podcast episodes. One on accounting for climate change, and another one, dynamic database CO2 emission scopes compliant companies, podcast episode number 5 and 6. I had the occasion to participate in a panel very well conducted by one Sharif Uddin Ahmed Rana of Malaysia in World Talent Economy, which had that time Professor James Eldridge of Stanford, Marshall Mermel, Sheridan Tatsuno, Professor James Eade, Professor Paul Beckwith, Professor Donald Steiney, downtrend. Very interesting. I had a very interesting panel discussion. In that continuing Marshall Mermel does follow me, or we are connected on the LinkedIn. One of the things which he talked, this is on a biochar. I found what he said is that very interesting one. Today's waste will become the raw materials that abate climate change and damage and are financed through European Union climate bonds. And he said since March 2020, there have been over 2 plus trillion euros in climate bonds issued in this endeavor. Now, of course, other elements have interfered, like the war in Ukraine and other political events, but it is still in process. This is a very significant aspect of what we are trying to tell here in this particular forum of the risk management. The risk of financial liabilities which comes out of these climate bonds, and various aspects of how ESG audit is conducted. I would like to take it up with a company, any company, or M&M has given this information. My purpose is a dynamic database, CO2 emission, scopes compliant companies, the accounting for climate change. The accounting for these things are very important. And who does it what? When we are talking about $2 trillion plus, which had been handed over in the climate bonds and all that, to companies for the purpose of waste management, turning into a greenhouse. We are talking about the commitment from the companies. I do see quite a number of things come from World Bank, or this thing telling that so and so had been removed or being penalized, and that's sort of what is SEBI for India is possibly World Bank for international level. Companies that go in for these climate bonds do get possibly the funding, and how that funding is being utilized, who are the people involved in it, and the total funding in the climate bond, the mere ESG audit, I won't be able to tell anything about that and how it has been satisfactory. We got to look at this law number 2. This commitment of various, whether biochar or waste management, we got to bring the accountability factor, both in terms of the individuals who are manning it and the how it is being utilized and what is the target dates. When the target dates are given, for example, energy productivity by 2030, we are talking about reduce carbon intensity by 47% by financial year 33 and 34, and carbon neutral by 2040. I mean, these are all targets. This is what we had been talking about in terms of deploying law number 2 in identifying what the CAG are and what the CAR are. CAR is very important in this area, where I also found, for example, CO2 emissions by, if you go by the data which is being published per capita. That is number 1, they say. Number 2 is country-wise. China is possibly number 1. When they take it by per capita, it comes down. But in my analytics, I found per the ranking changes completely. When I did it on this thing's CO2 emissions by area-wise, I found South Korea topping the list. Then you have Japan, you have Germany, you have France. These are the small countries with a lesser area and industrial nations, industrial being the high this thing. You have a major change coming. We got to identify that. I felt is the most important thing, the basis in which we are going to analyze per area wise, where possibly I mean, Russia is the last one in terms of this thing. But we got to look at it from this point. What is there happening in Chembur, for example, or CO2 emission from Dadar or from Bandra. I mean, but area-wise, we are going to go for spread all over the country. That particular database, a dynamic database of CO2 emission, with individuals manning it, being provided with the funds of climate bond being applied for. Some of them are about $500 million. Amazing. A single for biochar, what Marshall Mermel had been talking about. It's a single one, about $500 million. Despite all the development in the industrial development that has happened, to control these things, that is in terms of reduction for the green land, it is very important that database, dynamic database, knowledge database, how it is being given and how it is being the conduct. The conduct of individuals is the one which is I'm stressing. If M&M and other companies can come forward, we can do the things together. And that reporting, for what I have seen in the integrated annual report of M&M, which you see in this particular page, I do not know how it conveys any meaning to anyone who is looking at it. As far as I'm concerned, I know I'm in plunged into some of these climate change and other things and all that, but I'm not sure what exactly the contribution by M&M until they put the target 2040, 2033, 34. You have the carbon emission 2030, and all these things have to be put in terms of CAGR and CARR. If you do that, I think it will have a better meaning, and the risk aspects of it is already brought in these process areas of carbon emissions in terms of repeat the same number of people, 1,000 people. There are 250 teams and 250 process areas for each process blocks, and identify these your targets, identify your what you are doing, CDGR and CDRR, a daily reduction rate, and announce it, and how it is being caught up, whether by 2044, we are talking about 2040, 2047, all these years are a long way off, but we have to get it under our control and our reporting system as on today. That is what I am looking at, the dynamic database system. This is governance, means is dynamic. It cannot be postponed for a future date. It has to be done. It cannot be done on a ex post facto basis. It has to be done on a dynamic basis. Companies have to move forward from accounting to accountability, which is very much lacking, mainly because accounting is not based on science, but a debit credit hypothesis. It has tied the management down to ex post facto analytics. Accounting cannot bring in accountability, but corporate governance can. I propose a strategy of dividing large workforces into small 5-member teams, with one member focused on ethical responsibility to track performance and improve accountability. Corporate governance, analytics, disparate companies like say ICICI Bank or Deloitte can be compared with, say, Bajaj Auto. So this is the one where you can download all these 6 files. It gives the introduction to the corporate atomic structure and the detailed analytics or fixing the standards, SOS Governance Standards for M&M and Reliance. This would help you to start in terms of making yourself important for yourself, because when we say 2047 Viksit Bharat has got a target, the target has to be achieved whether you are as on today. I found both M&M and as well as Reliance are not fit, are not capable as on today to reach on the target of 2047 at a particular percentage of CAGR of 15%. One can do that for 2%, 3%. Then where is your contribution for fixed bar 2047? You got to fix the CAGR of minimum 15% for each company and go towards that. And that is what this antics of M&M and Reliance have come about, and you should try.